But I want to start by maybe giving you a little bit of an experiment, working on a little bit of an experiment. You know, as we've been following all the crazy headlines that are happening, I know there is, you know, there's a lot going on in Portland and Chicago and Memphis, all over the country. There have been these protests. And it's real easy to sort of get drawn into some of the energy of that. We like it or we don't like it. How we feel about it becomes a kind of a hook. So what I'd like you to imagine right now is that you are involved in one of these protests. Maybe it's because you really care about that cause and it's something that you were there to make your voice heard, or maybe you were just on the street and you kind of got swept up in it and you're moving with the energy of this crowd that has a real sense of purpose to it, and it's easy to get hooked into that, right? And as the crowd continues, you sense the energy sort of escalating. And there's a real sense of now maybe even self-righteousness or indignation, or it's just becoming a little bit more aggressive and assertive. And then eventually the crowd, this mob sort of moves in and there's an opposing side coming at you. And what I want you to do is just think about what your response might be in there. What's happening for you as you're in the middle of that? Even as maybe it starts to even look like it might turn violent and there are people picking up stones or bottles, or what's your response in there? And as you think about it from this kind of objective place, can you come to a spiritual response? What would that look like? This series that we started last week is about looking for spiritual solutions in fraught times. That's kind of what we're about. And the talk today that I'm kind of equating or associating with Karen's idea that we ought to let it be just whatever it is, to let it be in that space, I'm calling that a sense of radical acceptance, right? It's a place of coming from a perspective that we bring to all of the circumstances of our lives that has a certain neutrality to it. Right? We're going to accept reality just as it is without getting hooked into wanting it to be different, wanting to label it right or wrong, wanting it to be good or bad. How do we move into a space of really allowing whatever it is to be exactly what it is without piling our own story and meaning on top of it, right? So I've been looking at some of the videos from Martha Creek this last week, and she's got this beautiful example of imagine that there's a flat tire on your car when you go out, you're in a hurry to get somewhere, right? And we get into a story about that. Oh, it's horrible. Why me? Why is it always me? I don't have time for this. And we bring a certain energy to that, or we might. And in reality, sort of real world, third dimension, earthly reality, what's really happened is there's a flat tire. Everything else is meaning that we piled on top of it that moves us into a space of being much more restricted and constricted about being able to allow spirit to sort of express through us. Yeah? So I want to share a story, a biblical story that you'll all know well, but think of it in this context, right? We're looking at how Jesus responds from this place of letting it be whatever it is, letting him come from this place of radical acceptance. It is what it is, right? So the story is the woman caught in adultery. And well, I'll just read the story. So early in the morning, he came again to the temple. This is Jesus coming to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and began to teach him. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and making her stand before all of them. They said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law of Moses, he commanded to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" They said this to test him, so that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. When they kept on questioning, he straightened up and said to them, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And once again he bent down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they went away, one by one, beginning with the elders. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and from now on do not sin again." Accepting reality just as it is. I mean, from a lot of levels there. I mean, certainly he was accepting and forgiving toward the woman committed into adultery. But I want to sort of dig down into a little bit, some other ways in which we see acceptance happening on Jesus's part, right? The first of those is that he's not denying anything about Mosaic law, right? He's not standing up against it saying the law needs to change, it's a different way. He sort of skips right over that part of the question. He's not fighting against it. He's not pushing back. He's not bringing a sort of antagonistic energy to it. He's accepting that, you know what? The reality is, yep, that's written in Mosaic law. There's nothing really to argue about that, so we don't even need to discuss that piece. He also is not buying into the, or not giving any power or pushing against the crowd, the energy of the crowd, the self-righteousness of the crowd, this mob that's coming at them, wanting someone to have to face up to the consequences of her action, right? He skips over that. He doesn't engage that. He doesn't tell them they need to calm down. He doesn't give them any other instruction other than to sort of turn the question back on them, right? That I'll get to more on that in just a minute. The other piece is he doesn't go up against the priests who are bringing these charges. He's not feeling any anger or animosity. It's like they got a case to make. They're up against me. This is something that's against me. Jesus just sort of accepts as it is. Okay, here's the Pharisees. Here's the Sadducees. This is what they brought. This is a test for me. I get it. Without getting eager or anxious about it, he literally bends down and writes in the sand. I like to think, I mean, we don't know what he wrote. It doesn't say. And there are lots of biblical exegeses that will go into different interpretations of that. My own, for our purposes this morning, would be that it's just a chance to kind of take a breath, calm down, and recognize that this is what is, writing in the ground. This is what is. This is what's real on the earthly plane. Boom. So he centers himself and moves into a place of being able to respond in a more effective way. He's also not resisting his own inclination, right? There might have been a space where in his own thinking, what he might have been wanting to do is come at it from a completely different position. And what he is present to is just the energy and inspiration and the guidance that he's receiving. It's not, there's a place where it's completely neutral. And it's a space of peace. It's a space that moves the crowd especially into a recognition that, this really isn't my business. With a single question, you who is without sin. You start to reflect inside. And I think for us, that's a huge kind of instruction, right? That a way for us to be comfortable with exactly what reality is presenting to us is to recognize what is and is not our business. Is this something that I have the power and the capacity to change? Or is this something that is totally under someone else's dominion and expression? So it really becomes a place of self-reflection, a question for us to take into our own interactions. So going back now to how you would show up in that circumstance of being in a protest, when all this is starting to erupt around you. Are you able to come from that space of neutrality? Can you be with the anger or frustration that you feel that energy rising among the crowd and recognize that that's from their perspective, right? That's their consciousness. I'm not going to change that. I mean, certainly prayer might have some influence, but in that moment, my choice is to really manage my own response, to manage those places where I myself might be bringing those same energies. Because see, here's the thing, and this is what Martha Creek also suggests, is that if 90% of the time I'm coming from that place of centeredness, if 90% of the time I realize that God is in every circumstance, even in the protests that are happening around the country, God is present in those. If 90% of the time I'm able to come from that space, that's wonderful. And you know what? The other 10%, where we think that God is apart from us or separate from the situation or not available or present, in that 10% lies 100% of the pain and the suffering and the anxiety and the depression and the separation that we experience. 100% of it comes out of those times when we don't recognize that Spirit is here, Spirit is available, Spirit is present. So that's where our work is, in that 10%. Those spaces where we feel ourselves getting hooked, right? So here's a really simple example. I blogged about it this week, so I won't go into it, but I also had some insight since then. So I was sitting here at my desk this week, and I had a piece of pizza for my lunch, and I dropped it on the floor, and pizza sauce spattered all over this rug that I've had for years. I really like it, and that's it, right? And as it's falling, as it hit the floor, this movie played in my mind that was a movie of me being triggered and reacting in ways that I would have ages ago, you know, spouting off swear words and being really angry about it and angry at myself for being that stupid and clumsy. And like, that's the movie that played in my mind. Only in my mind, the movie was being, it was directed as a comedy. So I was able to sort of, in that moment, I never got triggered. I just moved into a place of being kind of amused. Like, that happened, present to what is, not putting a story on top of it, just that happened. And what happened after that, and here's where I think is good growth for all of us, is I really felt a little bit proud of that. Like, woo, I've transcended an old way of being. I now am going to show up in this with this new consciousness. And literally 10 minutes later, to reward myself, I'd gone out to Mariano's, is my favorite grocery store, even though it's a bit of a drive away. They got the best produce. So I was on my way to Mariano's, and traffic was sluggish, and my air conditioner wasn't working. And I turned onto, I don't remember, not Grosse Pointe, one of the streets that is a sort of main thoroughfare, and it was totally under construction, so traffic was shut down. What should have been a 5 or 10 minute drive ended up being 40 minutes, right? My ability to be with what was in that moment that I was so proud of just 10 minutes earlier totally went out the window. So I realized next level is remembering that place within, when we're watching within ourselves, part of being okay with what is being okay with our own responses, right? Okay, there are times when I'm going to show up with this higher level of consciousness that brings me a sense of peace and joy, and I can see it. And there are other times that I'm not going to be in that state. It's going to be upset. I'm going to get triggered. There's sort of, I imagine there are like 3 stages of that. There's one where it's like totally surpasses any sort of conscious idea, and like a fish on a hook, you're just in it, like fully in it. And then there's other times where it's like you're about to bite on the hook and you realize what you're doing and you can sort of dial it back. So you're a little bit triggered, but don't quite go into it. And then the third is the one that I was so proud of, like when you just look at the situation and you're able to accept that spirit is here and maybe even see some humor or some new insights or something, some place for growth and opportunity without ever having to go through any of the triggering. Like, that's the third level. And for us to be okay with what is, it's not just about what's happening around us, it's what's happening within us. Because none of us, until we're ready to ascend, is going to come from that space of highest level consciousness in every situation, in every moment. So we get the chance to practice. You'll get a chance to practice today. Something in this service will happen. You'll see something in the comments. You'll see somebody wearing something, and a judgment will come up, and you'll be able to sort of look at that. And we get to practice being this presence of the divine, being okay with exactly what is, being radically accepting of life on its own terms, so that we then have a sort of neutral space to allow spirit to lift us and express us and heal us and let us be a part of that change that will create the world that we all want, the world that works for all. So let's now prepare for a time of meditation. Karen will prepare us with song, and I invite you to just let your heart open and be fully present to whatever's most alive in you right now.
In the stillness of this moment, there is peace. There is peace. In the stillness of this moment, there is peace. There is peace. And I rest and trust and breathe and know that in the stillness of this moment, there is peace. So take a deep breath. I'm going to have you sing it one time with me. In the stillness of this moment, in the stillness of this moment, I am peace. I am peace. I am peace. That line again. In the stillness of this moment, I am peace. I am peace. I am peace, and I rest. And I rest and trust and breathe and know that in the stillness of this moment, I am peace. I am peace.
So as we rest now in this wonderful, peaceful energy, it's an energy that we know is collective. While Karen led us into it with her beautiful voice and her profoundly inspirational lyrics, each of us plays a part in bringing forth this energy, this field, into which we can know truth at a deeper level. And what we know to be true at the deepest level is that there is only one power and presence. It's God. It's the infinite. It's always and everywhere with us. And it's in these quiet times of reflection, when we're feeling that peace and maybe even having a more palpable experience of the divine, that we are reassured that it's available to us no matter what. Whether we're engaged in a circumstance or an interaction that we like, or that maybe is triggering for us, whether we're involved in a situation that we feel is right or wrong, that we push against or that we can accept, we know that beyond the feeling, the emotional aspect of it, the human response, there's a deeper truth. It's the truth that God is. And as we rest in that truth, not only does our awareness of that presence become more accessible to us, we actually become the very energy that we wish to bring forth. Whatever we choose to call an experience determines the experience that we take from it. And so in these quiet moments, we set an intention to be aware of the choice points that we have as we move through our journey, as we move through the fullness of life's experience, to know that in bringing forth an awareness of our divinity, that healing, that blessing, that gratitude and joy, the doors are open for all of those. So I invite you now to just rest in exactly what is for you, knowing and trusting that there's no need to make it any different than it is. It is what it is. And as we allow Spirit to inspire us, to guide us, we create our experience of it. Know that truth as we rest in just a moment of silence. Very gently now, as we begin to return our attention to whatever's around us, the sights or the sounds around us, I'd like us to close with 5 short affirmations. These are the unity principles in shorthand, but they are beautiful and they are powerful. The first is God is. Say that with me aloud wherever you are. God is. I am. Together, I am. I think. I pray. I do. And all is well. Amen.
In the stillness of this moment, I am love. I am love. Sing that with me now. In the stillness of this moment, I am love. I am love. I am love, and I rest. And I rest and trust and breathe and know that in the stillness of this moment I am love. I am peace.
Hey, thanks for watching this YouTube video. If Unity's message of positive spiritual living resonates with you, I hope you'll subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date on other lessons as we post them. Also, if you're able to support us financially in the work that we do in the world, please check below for contact information. You can visit our website, find more about what programming we offer, as well as how to give. Blessings.